Captain Dae-ho Kim stood at attention near the observation window of the diplomatic vessel. His dark uniform was pressed perfectly, every metal in place. He watched the massive alien ship grow larger as they approached. The Veltheron flagship looked like a floating crystal palace, glowing with soft blue light against the darkness of space. Dae-ho had fought in the Swarm Wars for 3 years. He had seen death and destruction across a dozen worlds. He had watched entire colonies burn, but nothing in his military training had prepared him for this moment. Earth was about to make its first real alliance with an alien empire that considered humans to be barely intelligent creatures. Nervous, Captain? Ambassador Soo-jin Park walked up beside him. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and graying hair. She had spent 20 years learning alien cultures, preparing for this day. Just observant, Ambassador, Dae-ho replied. His hand unconsciously touched the sidearm at his hip. Old habits from the war. Soo-jin smiled. The Veltherans don't allow weapons at diplomatic functions. You'll have to leave that behind. See. Dae-ho nodded but didn't like it. Something about this whole situation felt wrong. The Veltherans had refused human security on their ship. They claimed their telepathic abilities made additional guards unnecessary. They could sense hostile intent before it became action. At least, that's what they said. The docking procedure took an hour. When the airlock finally opened, Dae-ho got his first look at the Veltherans in person. They were tall and thin, with skin that seemed to shimmer like crystal. Their eyes had no pupils, just swirling pools of light. They moved with an unnatural grace, as if gravity affected them differently. A Veltheron official greeted the human delegation. He spoke without moving his lips much, his voice carrying a strange echo. Welcome to the Time's Celestial Dawn *. The Imperial Princess awaits you in the Grand Hall. Please, follow. The corridors of the ship were beautiful but strange. The walls seemed alive with flowing light. Music played from nowhere, haunting and cold. Dae-ho counted the turns they made, memorized the layout. Another old habit. Always know your exits. The Grand Hall was enormous. Hundreds of Veltherans filled the space, all dressed in flowing robes that changed color. Massive pillars held up the ceiling, each one carved with symbols that hurt to look at directly. At the far end of the hall, on a raised platform, sat Princess Hai-1. She was younger than Dae-ho expected. Her crystalline features caught the light, making her appear almost angelic. But there was intelligence in those swirling eyes. She watched the human delegation enter with clear curiosity. Humans. Her voice filled the hall without shouting. You have traveled far to seek alliance with the Veltheron Empire. We welcome you. Though your kind is young and your understanding limited. Let us see if you are worthy of our friendship. Dae-ho bristled at the condescending tone, but kept his face neutral. Ambassador Soo-jin had warned him about this. The Veltherans believed themselves superior to all other species. They had mastered telepathy 1,000,000 years ago. They had technology beyond human comprehension. To them, humans were children playing with fire. As the princess continued her speech, Dae-ho let his eyes wander the hall. He counted guards, noted their positions, observed their equipment. Then he noticed something odd. The decorative pillars along the walls were giving off faint energy readings. His military implant, designed to detect power sources, was picking up fluctuations. He touched his earpiece, activating the private channel to Ambassador Soo-jin. Ma'am, I'm reading unusual energy signatures from the pillars. Soo-jin's response was sharp. Not now, Captain. Don't embarrass us. But Dae-ho couldn't shake the feeling. He had learned to trust his instincts during the Swarm Wars. Those instincts had kept him alive when others died. He studied the pillars more carefully. The energy patterns were wrong. They pulsed irregularly, like a heartbeat with an arrhythmia. He spotted movement near one of the pillars. A Veltheron in servant's robes adjusted something at the base. The motion was too quick, too furtive. Dae-ho's combat senses screamed danger. Ambassador, we need to evacuate, he said urgently. Something is wrong. Soo-jin turned to him with anger in her eyes. "Captain, stand down. You're going to ruin everything," one of the Veltharan officials nearby had overheard. He approached Deho with an amused expression. "The human warrior senses danger? How curious. Our telepaths detect nothing. Perhaps your primitive instincts misfire in such grand surroundings." Other Veltharans laughed softly. Even Princess Hai Wan seemed entertained by the exchange. Deho felt his face burn with embarrassment, but the feeling of wrongness only grew stronger. He watched the servant near the pillar slip away into the crowd. The energy readings spiked. His implant began to scream warnings directly into his mind. Princess He Wan stood, raising her crystalline hands for silence. "Let us begin the formal exchange of gifts. Humans, you have brought offerings?" Ambassador Sujin stepped forward, beginning the carefully rehearsed presentation. Deho barely heard the words. His entire focus was on the pillar, where the servant had been. The energy signature was building to critical levels. This wasn't decoration. This was a weapon. Time seemed to slow. Deho saw the pillar begin to glow brighter. He saw crystalline fractures spreading across its surface. He saw the faces of the Veltharans, still unaware, still convinced of their own superiority. He didn't think. He just moved. Deho broke from the diplomatic formation and ran toward the platform. Veltharan guards shouted in alarm. Ambassador Sujin called his name, but he didn't stop. He had maybe 3 seconds. Princess Hai Wan turned toward the commotion, confusion on her alien features. She didn't understand. How could she? Her telepaths sensed nothing. Their technology detected nothing. In their arrogance, they had become blind to threats they couldn't telepathically perceive. Deho reached the platform as the pillar erupted. He didn't slow down. He crashed into Princess Hai Wan with his full weight, wrapping his arms around her and twisting his body to shield her from the blast. The explosion was thunder and lightning combined. Plasma energy tore through the grand hall like the wrath of an angry god. Deho felt his back burn as the heat washed over him. He felt the princess's crystalline body beneath his, fragile and surprisingly warm. He felt her hand clutch at his uniform in terror and confusion. Debris rained down around them. Screams filled the air. The beautiful hall became a scene of carnage in seconds. Deho kept his body over the princess, protecting her from falling chunks of crystal and metal. His training took over. Stay low. Cover the target. Wait for the secondary explosion. But there was no secondary explosion. Just smoke and fire and the moans of the wounded. Deho tried to lift himself up, but his strength was gone. His back felt like molten metal had been poured across it. The pain was distant, though. Muted by shock and adrenaline, he looked down at Princess He Wan. Her swirling eyes stared up at him in wonder and fear. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you?" Deho tried to answer, but darkness crept in from the edges of his vision. He felt her crystalline hand touch his face, and suddenly he was drowning in sensation. Images and emotions that weren't his own flooded his mind. It was telepathy, raw and unfiltered. She was inside his head, seeing his memories, feeling his intentions. The last thing Deho heard before unconsciousness took him was the princess screaming for help, not for herself, for him. The human who had shielded her with his own body, the primitive who had saved her when her own superior people could not. Deho woke to pain. It wrapped around his body like a living thing, squeezing and burning. He tried to move but couldn't. Something held his wrists and ankles in place. His eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the dim blue light. He was in a cell. The walls were smooth crystal that pulsed with soft light. His body lay on a hard platform, covered in some kind of gel. The gel was warm and tingled against his skin. Medical technology, he guessed. It was healing him but also keeping him immobilized. "You're awake." "Good." The voice came from beyond the energy barrier that served as the cell door. A human man stood there, wearing a dirty gray jumpsuit. He was thin, with a beard that hadn't been trimmed in months. "I'm Taemin. I've been a guest of the Veltharans for 2 years now. Welcome to hell." Deho tried to speak, but his throat was dry. He coughed, tasting blood. Taemin gestured, and a small amount of water materialized in a cup near Daeho's head. Drink. The gel will let you move enough for that. Don't try anything else, or it'll tighten up, and you'll feel like you're drowning. Daeho carefully lifted his head and sipped the water. It was cold and tasteless. What happened? Where's Princess Hai-1? The princess is in a healing chamber. She's alive, barely. You saved her life. Taemin's expression was bitter. And they've decided that makes you guilty of trying to kill her. That's insane. I protected her from the blast. Veltharan logic isn't human logic, Taemin said, sitting down cross-legged outside the cell. They can't understand why one of their own would betray them. Their telepathy makes betrayal almost impossible. They sense hostile intentions before they become actions. So when the blast happened and people died, they needed someone to blame. You're human. You were close to the princess. Your energy signature was all over the blast site. Case closed. Daeho felt anger rise in his chest. Someone set that explosive. A Veltharan servant was at the pillar right before it went off. Did anyone else see this servant? Any recordings? I don't know. Maybe the security footage. Already reviewed. Nothing suspicious. The Veltharans believe their own security systems are perfect. If the footage doesn't show a Veltharan betrayer, then there wasn't one. Must have been the primitive human who somehow snuck a bomb past all their advanced sensors. Taemin laughed darkly. They'd rather believe that than admit their system failed. Daeho closed his eyes, trying to control his frustration. What about Ambassador Sujin? The human delegation? They're fighting for you. Sujin has been demanding your release for 3 days straight. But Veltharan law is absolute. You'll stand trial. In the Court of Shattered Stars. The Empress herself will preside. Taemin's voice softened. I'm sorry. But you need to understand the situation. Without the princess's testimony, you have no defense. And the princess is dying. The words hit Daeho like a physical blow. Dying? But I saved her. The blast damaged her crystalline matrix. It's like your DNA, but for their entire body structure. Even with their advanced healing technology, she's fading. The royal physicians give her maybe a week. Taemin stood up. If she dies before the trial, you're automatically guilty. If she lives but can't testify, you're guilty. The only way you survive is if she wakes up, remembers what happened, and speaks in your defense. And the chances of that? The physicians say almost zero. Taemin turned to leave. I'll come back tomorrow. Try to rest. The gel will speed your healing. You'll need your strength for the trial. The next 3 days were the longest of Daeho's life. The gel slowly released him as his burns healed. Veltharan medical technology was incredible. By the 2nd day, he could sit up. By the 3rd, he could walk around the small cell. But his body healing did nothing for his mind. Taemin visited every day, teaching him the basics of Veltharan court protocol. The rules were insane and contradictory. Speak only when the star patterns on the ceiling aligned in specific ways. Never show emotion because Veltharans read it as deception. Never mention human concepts like honor or duty because they believe primitives can't truly understand such things. You're asking me to deny everything I am, Daeho said on the 3rd day. I'm asking you to survive, Taemin replied. I made the mistake of being honest in my trial. I told them about human courage, about sacrifice, about doing the right thing, even when it costs you everything. They laughed at me. Actually laughed. Then they sentenced me to lifetime imprisonment for crimes I didn't commit. What were you accused of? Stealing technology. I was an engineer on a joint research project. When some equipment went missing, they blamed the human. The Veltharan scientist who actually took it is probably selling it on the black market while I rot in here. Taemin's hands clenched into fists. Don't be like me. Don't think you can appeal to their better nature. They don't see us as equals. We're animals to them. On the 4th day, Ambassador Sujin was allowed to visit. She looked exhausted, her hair disheveled and her clothes wrinkled. She sat on the other side of the energy barrier and just stared at Daeho for a long moment. I'm sorry, she finally said. I should have listened to you. Your instincts were right. How many died? Deho asked quietly. 47 Veltharans. All nobles and high-ranking officials. The explosion was precisely placed to maximize casualties among the elite. This was an assassination attempt, a political strike. But they won't admit one of their own could do this. Have they found any evidence? Anything about the servant I saw? Sujin shook her head. I've pushed for a full investigation. But the Empress wants quick justice. The trial is set for tomorrow. The Court of Shattered Stars convenes at dawn. She leaned closer to the barrier. Deho, I need you to understand something. This trial is a formality. They've already decided you're guilty. The only question is whether they dissolve your atoms slowly or quickly. Stellar dissolution, Deho said. Tae-min had explained the execution method. They would put him in a chamber and literally scatter his molecules across space. A death so complete that nothing would remain. There's one chance, Sujin continued. If Princess Hai-1 wakes up and testifies, her word is absolute law in Veltharan culture. They can't lie telepathically, so a royal's testimony is considered perfect truth. If she says you saved her, they have to release you. You said she's dying. She is. But the physicians moved her to a more advanced healing chamber this morning. They're trying something experimental. It's a long shot, but it's the only shot we have. Sujin pressed her hand against the barrier. Hold on, Captain. Just hold on. That night, Deho couldn't sleep. He lay on the platform in his cell and stared at the crystal ceiling. He thought about his life, his choices, the path that had led him here. He had survived the swarm wars when so many hadn't. He had fought and killed to protect humanity, and now he would die because he had tried to protect an alien princess. The irony wasn't lost on him, but he couldn't bring himself to regret his choice. In that moment, when the explosion came, he hadn't thought about politics or alliances or species differences. He had just seen someone in danger and reacted. It was instinct. Pure and simple. The same instinct that had made him cover his fallen comrades under enemy fire. The same instinct that made humans throw themselves on grenades to save others. Maybe Tae-min was right. Maybe the Veltharans couldn't understand that kind of sacrifice. Maybe it was uniquely human, this stupid willingness to die for strangers. If that made him primitive in their eyes, then fine. He was primitive. But he was alive. And as long as he was alive, he would fight for the truth. The guards came for Deho at dawn. They were tall Veltharans in ceremonial armor that glowed with inner light. They placed energy shackles on his wrists and ankles, then led him through corridors filled with hostile stares. Other Veltharans watched him pass with expressions of disgust and anger. To them, he was the monster who had attacked their princess. The Court of Shattered Stars was unlike anything Deho had ever seen. The chamber was enormous and circular, with walls that seemed to open directly into space. Holographic stars surrounded the room, creating the illusion of floating in the cosmos. In the center was a raised platform where the accused would stand. Above it, suspended in the air by some kind of gravity manipulation, sat the judges. Empress Nara occupied the highest position. She looked like an older version of Princess Hai-1, with the same crystalline features but harder edges. Her eyes, those swirling pools of light, fixed on Deho with absolute hatred. This was a mother who believed he had tried to murder her daughter. The other judges were high lords and ladies of the Veltharan court. 12 in total, representing the 12 great houses. They floated in a semicircle around the Empress, their robes changing colors to reflect their moods. Right now, all showed shades of red and black, anger and judgment. Deho was led to the center platform. The moment he stepped onto it, the stars around him brightened and began to move. They swirled and danced, creating patterns that hurt his eyes. This was part of the trial. The stars would align or not align based on cosmic timing. Only when they aligned in specific ways could the accused speak. Human. Empress Nara's voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. You stand accused of the attempted murder of Princess Hai-1, heir to the Veltharan throne. You are accused of planting an explosive device that killed 47 of our people. You are accused of betraying the trust of diplomatic sanctuary. How do you answer these charges? Daeho looked up at the stars, waiting for alignment. Taemin had taught him to watch for the blue star to cross the red one. But the stars moved slowly, taunting him with their cosmic dance. The accused does not answer, announced High Inquisitor Jae Hwan, a thin Veltheron with cruel eyes. Silence is admission of guilt in our law. The stars have not aligned, Ambassador Sujin shouted from the gallery where the human delegation sat. You must give him time to speak according to your own rules. Empress Nara made a dismissive gesture. The human ambassador speaks truth. We will wait. But her tone suggested she would not wait long. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the blue star crossed the red. Daeho spoke quickly, knowing the alignment would last only seconds. I am innocent. I saved the princess from the explosion. I did not cause it. The stars shifted again, cutting off his words. Jae Hwan smiled coldly. The accused claims innocence. Let us examine the evidence. Holographic displays materialized around the chamber. They showed the grand hall before the explosion. Energy signatures were highlighted, including Daeho's. His implant, his communicator, his very body's bioelectric field, all glowed bright in the recording. The human's energy signature is everywhere at the blast site, Jae Hwan announced. Our sensors detected his technology activating moments before the explosion. The pattern matches a remote detonation device. That's because I was trying to warn people, Daeho shouted without waiting for star alignment. The outburst earned him shocked gasps from the Veltheron observers. Empress Nara's eyes flashed with anger. You dare speak out of turn? You show your primitive nature, human. No respect for law or order. Ambassador Sujin stood again. Your Majesty, we request to present evidence. We have security footage showing Captain Kim attempting to warn your people before the blast. Present it, the Empress commanded. The holographic displays changed. Now, they showed Daeho moving through the crowd. His face tense. His body language screaming urgency. The recording had audio. His voice came through clearly. Ambassador, we need to evacuate. Something is wrong. Then Sujin's response. Captain, stand down. You're going to ruin everything. The Veltheron official's mocking words. The human warrior senses danger? How curious. Our telepaths detect nothing. And finally, Daeho breaking ranks and running toward the princess just as the pillar exploded. The footage showed him tackle her, shield her with his body. Take the full force of the blast on his back. The chamber fell silent. Even the hostile Veltharans seemed uncertain. The evidence was clear. Daeho had tried to warn them. He had saved the princess at great personal cost, but Jae Hwan was not deterred. This proves nothing. Perhaps this was the human's plan all along. Create a dramatic rescue to gain the princess's trust. Our telepaths sensed no danger, because no Veltheran planned this attack. Only a non-telepathic being could have hidden such intentions. That's exactly my point, Daeho said. The stars had aligned again. Your telepathy made you blind. Someone attacked you using methods you couldn't detect. A Veltheran servant was at that pillar. I saw them. They triggered the device. Impossible, declared one of the floating judges. All Veltherans in that hall were scanned telepathically. None harbored hostile intent. Then they found a way to shield their thoughts, Daeho argued. Your telepathy has made you dependent. You've forgotten that not all threats can be sensed mentally. The chamber erupted in outrage. Veltherans, shouting over each other, insulted by the suggestion that their greatest ability could also be a weakness. The Empress raised her hand for silence, but her crystalline features had hardened even more. The human dares to lecture us on our own abilities, she said coldly. This arrogance confirms his guilt. He shows no remorse, no humility, no understanding of his place in the cosmic order. Daeho felt despair creeping in. Taemin had been right. They would never accept the truth because it challenged their sense of superiority. They would rather execute an innocent human than admit their system had failed. Ambassador Su Jin was shouting something, arguing with the judges. Other human delegation members had joined her, creating a commotion. The Veltheron guards moved to restrain them. That's when the chamber doors burst open. Princess He Wan stood in the doorway, supported by 2 physicians. She looked terrible. Her crystalline skin cracked and dull. Her movements weak and uncertain. But her eyes blazed with determination. The entire court fell silent, shocked by her presence. "Mother," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I demand to testify." Empress Nara rose from her floating throne. "Daughter, you should be in the healing chamber. You're not strong enough for this. I am strong enough to speak truth." He-One walked slowly toward the center platform, each step clearly causing her pain. In our culture, a royal's word is absolute. Our telepathic nature makes lies impossible. "I will tell you what happened, and you will believe me because you must." She reached the platform and turned to face the court. Daeho stood beside her, still shackled, still surrounded by accusing stars. "I felt Captain Kim's mind in the moment before the blast," Hae-Won began. "When he touched me, when he shielded me with his body, our minds connected. I experienced his memories, his intentions, his very soul." She paused, gathering strength. "He is innocent. More than innocent. He is honorable in ways we have forgotten. Daughter, your mind was damaged in the blast," Empress Nara said gently. "Your perceptions cannot be trusted. My perceptions are perfect." Hae-Won's voice rang out with sudden strength. "I saw his memories of war. I saw him protect his comrades, even when it meant his own suffering. I saw the human concept they call no one left behind. He has carried fallen soldiers through enemy fire. He has given his rations to starving civilians. He has made choices that defy logic, because humans possess something we lack." "And what is that?" Jae-Hwan asked mockingly. "The ability to sacrifice without calculation." Hae-Won looked at Daeho with something like wonder. "We Veltherans weigh every action telepathically. We know outcomes before we act. We choose based on logic and benefit. But humans act on instinct and faith. They protect others not because it benefits them, but because it is right. Captain Kim saved me without knowing if I would be grateful, if it would prevent war, if anyone would believe him. He did it because in that moment, I was a person in danger, and he could help." The court was absolutely silent now. The judges looked at each other uncertainly. Even Empress Nara seemed shaken. "This human possesses honor that we have lost," Hae-Won continued, "and you would execute him for it. You would kill the one being who proved that loyalty can exist across species, that sacrifice needs no telepathic bond. You would do this to hide your shame at being blind to a real threat." "He-Won, please," the Empress began. "Release him." The princess's words were a command. "Release him now, or I will renounce my title and leave the empire. You will have no heir. The royal line will end with you." The threat hung in the air like a blade. Empress Nara stared at her daughter, seeing the absolute determination there. Finally, slowly, she nodded. "Release the human," she commanded. The energy shackles fell away from Daeho's wrists and ankles. He stood on the platform, free but not truly free. The Veltheron court watched him with a mixture of confusion and lingering hostility. Princess Hae-Won swayed on her feet, exhausted from her testimony. Daeho caught her before she fell. "Thank you," she whispered. Then the physicians rushed forward and took her back to the healing chamber. Empress Nara descended from her floating throne. She approached Daeho slowly, studying him with those strange, swirling eyes. Up close, he could see the age in her crystalline features, the weight of ruling an empire for centuries. "My daughter has spoken in your defense," she said quietly. "I must honor her words. But understand this. Human. 47 of my people are dead. Someone must answer for their deaths. If not you, Then who? Before Deho could respond, High Inquisitor J1 spoke up. Your Majesty, if we accept the human's innocence, we must also accept that a Veltheron committed this crime. The implications are deeply troubling. Troubling or not, we must find the truth. The Empress turned to face the assembled court. I propose a compromise. Captain Kim will be released from imprisonment, but he will serve as my daughter's personal guardian until the true assassin is found. He will protect her life with his own. If he succeeds, his honor will be proven beyond doubt. If he fails, or if no assassin is found within one solar cycle, he will face dissolution. Ambassador Sujin shot to her feet. Your Majesty, this is outrageous. Captain Kim has already been declared innocent. You cannot. I can and I will, the Empress interrupted. This is Veltheran law. The accused may prove innocence through service. Do you accept these terms, Captain? Deho looked at Sujin, who was shaking her head frantically. He looked at the Empress, who watched him with calculating eyes. He thought about refusing, about letting the human delegation fight for his unconditional release. But that would take months, maybe years. And in that time, the real assassin would escape justice. I accept, he said. Sujin slumped in her seat, defeated. The Empress nodded with satisfaction. Then, it is decided. Captain Kim, you will be given quarters near the princess's chambers. You will attend her at all times when she is well enough to leave the healing ward. A human liaison will be assigned to help you navigate our customs. The trial ended abruptly. The judges dispersed. The stars faded. And Deho found himself standing alone in the enormous chamber. Tae-min appeared from somewhere in the crowd and approached cautiously. Well, he said, you're alive. That's better than I expected. But this new arrangement? You're basically still a prisoner. Just a prisoner with duties. I know, Deho replied, but at least now I have access to investigate. Someone tried to kill the princess. They're probably planning to try again. I need to find them before they succeed. Over the next few days, Deho settled into his new role. His quarters were small but comfortable, located in a corridor adjacent to the royal wing. The human liaison arrived on the second day. Her name was Youngmi Choi, a xenoanthropologist who had studied Veltheron culture for a decade. Youngmi was energetic and talkative, a stark contrast to Deho's quiet intensity. She had short hair dyed an unusual shade of purple and wore practical clothing adapted from both human and Veltheran styles. So you're the famous human who saved the princess, she said, looking him up and down. You don't look that impressive. No offense. None taken, Deho said. He was starting to like her already. Youngmi helped him understand the complex web of Veltheran court politics. There were 12 great houses, each with their own agendas and grudges. The military faction, led by General Wujin, had opposed the human alliance from the start. They believed humanity would corrupt Veltheran purity. Then there were the merchant houses who saw profit in trade with Earth. The scholar houses who were curious about human culture. The isolationist houses who wanted nothing to do with any aliens. Any one of these groups could have motive for the assassination, Youngmi explained. Kill the princess, blame the humans, and the alliance dies. Maybe start a war where the Veltherans conquer Earth instead of partnering with us. Princess Haiwan emerged from the healing chamber after 2 weeks. Her crystalline features had regained most of their luster, though faint cracks remained visible along her arms. She was weak but determined to resume her duties. Deho began accompanying her everywhere. At first, their interactions were awkward. She was royalty, used to being obeyed without question. He was a soldier, trained to assess threats and take action. They moved through the palace in tense silence, with Deho always scanning their surroundings and Hye-won trying to maintain dignity while still recovering. But slowly, something changed. Hye-won began to see the world through Deho's eyes. She noticed how he cataloged exits and defensive positions, how he identified potential weapons in seemingly harmless objects, how he read body language and micro-expressions that Veltherans, with their telepathy, had never needed to learn. You're always watching, she observed one day as they walked through a garden. "Don't you ever relax?" "Not when someone wants you dead," Daeho replied. He was studying a group of gardeners, noting their positions and tools. "Our telepaths would sense hostile intent. Your telepaths didn't sense it last time." Hai-1 fell silent, stung by the truth. After a moment, she asked, "How do you do it? How do you know who to trust without telepathy?" Daeho considered the question. Actions. People can lie with words, but actions tell the truth. Watch what someone does when they think no one is looking. That's who they really are. "Daeho, teach me," Hai-1 said suddenly. "Teach me to see like you do." So Daeho began teaching the princess the basics of threat assessment. How to notice when someone's words didn't match their body language. How to spot patterns in behavior. How to trust instinct when logic failed. Hai-1 proved to be a quick student, her powerful mind adapting to these new concepts with surprising ease. Young Mi, meanwhile, worked on the technological side of the investigation. She had a theory about how the assassin had hidden from the telepaths. There were rumors, she told Daeho one night, about psionic dampeners being developed in human research facilities. Experimental technology designed to shield against telepathic scanning. If someone stole that technology and gave it to the assassin, then the assassin could have stood right next to the telepaths and they wouldn't sense anything. Daeho finished. "Can you build a detector for these dampeners?" "Maybe, if I can get access to the original research data." Daeho contacted Ambassador Su-jin, who reluctantly agreed to transmit the classified files. The alliance hung by a thread, and any human technology that enabled the assassination would destroy what little trust remained. But they had no choice. They needed the truth. Young Mi spent 3 days locked in her laboratory. When she emerged, she held a small device that looked like a modified scanner. This should detect the specific energy signature that psionic dampeners give off. "But I need to test it." They tested it in the palace, scanning crowds at formal events. For weeks, they found nothing. Daeho began to wonder if the assassin had fled or gone dormant. Then, during a ceremony in the throne room, Young Mi's detector went off. The signal came from a high-ranking military officer standing near the Empress. Daeho recognized him. General Wu Jin, leader of the military faction. He stood perfectly still, his expression neutral, his mind apparently open to telepathic scanning. But the detector said otherwise. He was wearing a dampener. Daeho felt his heart race. This was it. The conspiracy went all the way to the top of the military. But they couldn't arrest a general without proof. One detection wasn't enough. "We need to follow him," Daeho told Young Mi. "See who else he meets with. Build a complete picture of the conspiracy." Over the next weeks, they conducted surveillance with Princess Hai-1's help. The princess used her royal authority to access security recordings and movement logs. They discovered that General Wu Jin met regularly with 6 other military officers. All 7 wore psionic dampeners during their secret meetings. "They're planning something big," Hai-1 said, studying the data. "The alliance signing ceremony is in 3 days. All the human delegation will be there. My mother will be there. It's the perfect opportunity for another attack. They'll try to kill everyone and blame it on humans," Daeho realized. "Make it look like a suicide attack. The Veltharans would have justification for war against Earth." Young Mi nodded grimly. "And with the entire human delegation dead, there would be no one left to argue the truth." Daeho looked at the 2 women who had become his unlikely allies. A princess learning to see without telepathy. A scientist fighting to prove human worth. And himself, a soldier trying to prevent a war. "Then we set a trap of our own," he said. "Let them come to the ceremony. Let them try. And we'll be ready." The alliance signing ceremony was held in the grandest hall of the Veltharan Palace. It had been rebuilt after the first attack, now even more magnificent than before. Crystal columns reached toward a ceiling that showed the stars themselves. Hundreds of Veltharans filled the space, dressed in their finest robes. The human delegation occupied a raised platform near the center, with Ambassador Su-jin at the front. Daeho stood beside Princess He-won on the royal dais. He wore a formal uniform that the Veltherons had provided, but underneath he carried his combat knife and a human plasma pistol. Young Mi had smuggled the weapons to him the night before. If the Veltherons discovered he was armed, it would cause a diplomatic incident. But Daeho didn't care. He wouldn't face assassins unarmed again. Young Mi sat in the technical booth, her psionic dampener detector hidden among the ceremonial equipment. She had modified it to not only detect dampeners but also transmit their locations directly to Daeho's military implant. He would see the assassins coming before they struck. Empress Nara began her speech, her voice filling the hall with practiced authority. She spoke of peace and cooperation, of two species finding common ground despite their differences. It was beautiful rhetoric, but Daeho barely heard it. His eyes scanned the crowd constantly. That's when his implant started screaming warnings directly into his mind. 7 red indicators appeared in his vision, overlaid on his view of the hall. 7 psionic dampeners. 7 assassins. They were positioned in a perfect formation to maximize casualties. General Wu Jin stood near the Empress herself. Daeho touched his earpiece, activating the encrypted channel to Ambassador Sujin. 7 hostiles, all wearing dampeners. They're in position. Sujin's response was calm despite the danger. Human security teams are ready. Taemin is in position with the evacuation protocols. We wait for your signal. Princess He-won noticed Daeho's tension. She leaned close and whispered, "How many?" 7, including General Wu Jin. Her crystalline features hardened. "The general has served my mother for a century. If he betrays us now, it will shatter her." "Truth shatters," Daeho said quietly. "But it's better than living a lie." The Empress finished her speech and called forward the human and Veltheran representatives to sign the alliance document. Ambassador Sujin stood, her delegation rising with her. This was the moment. The signing would make the alliance official. The assassins would strike to prevent it. Daeho saw General Wu Jin reach into his robes, saw the other 6 conspirators do the same. Energy weapons, military grade, powerful enough to cut through shields and armor. "Now!" Daeho shouted. Everything happened at once. The 7 assassins drew their weapons and fired. But Daeho had already moved, pulling Princess He-won down behind the reinforced royal dais. Ambassador Sujin hit the deck, her security team throwing themselves over the human delegates. Taemin activated emergency shields around the main platforms. But dozens of Veltheran nobles weren't fast enough. Energy blasts tore through the crowd. Screams filled the hall. The beautiful ceremony became chaos in seconds. Daeho pulled his plasma pistol and returned fire. His first shot hit one of the assassins square in the chest, dropping him instantly. The Veltheran guards, finally realizing the threat, moved to engage. But they were too slow, too dependent on telepathy to coordinate. The assassins had trained for this. They moved with military precision, covering each other's positions. "Human security, engage!" Sujin shouted into her communicator. 5 human soldiers emerged from concealed positions around the hall. They had been smuggled in piece by piece over the last 3 days, disguised as technical staff. Now they revealed themselves, armed and ready. Unlike the Veltherans, they didn't need telepathy to fight together. They used hand signals and tactical training, moving as a coordinated unit. Daeho joined them, leaving Princess He-won under Taemin's protection. He moved through the chaos with the instincts of a soldier who had survived the swarm wars. The assassins were good, but they had made a critical mistake. They had assumed humans would be easy targets. They had forgotten that humanity had been fighting for survival for years. One assassin tried to reach the Empress, but Daeho intercepted him. They fought hand to hand, the Veltheran's superior strength against Daeho's combat experience. The assassin was taller and stronger, but Daeho was faster. He used the Veltheran's momentum against him, swept his legs, and put 2 plasma rounds into his chest. Youngmi's voice came through Daeho's earpiece. "I've locked down the hall's defensive systems. The assassins can't escape, but General Wu Jin is heading for the Empress." Daeho looked across the hall. The Empress stood frozen in shock, unable to process that one of her most trusted generals was betraying her. Wu Jin advanced with his energy weapon raised, his face twisted with righteous fury. "You have corrupted us!" Wu Jin shouted. "These humans are a plague. They will destroy everything we have built. I act to preserve Veltheron purity." Deho ran. He crossed the hall in seconds, his augmented muscles pushing past normal human limits. He reached the Empress just as Wu Jin fired. The energy blast hit Deho's shoulder, spinning him around. Pain exploded through his body, but he didn't fall. He raised his plasma pistol and fired back. The shot took Wu Jin in the leg, dropping him to one knee. Veltheron guards finally reached the general, disarming him and forcing him to the ground. The other assassins were being subdued as well. The human security team had turned the tide, but the cost had been high. Deho collapsed, his shoulder smoking from the energy burn. The Empress knelt beside him, her crystalline hands hovering over his wound. "You saved me," she whispered. "Again. You humans keep saving us from our own blindness." "Not blind," Deho managed through gritted teeth. "Just different. We see different things." Princess Hai-1 rushed to his side, pushing through the guards. "Get him to medical immediately." As the physicians worked to stabilize him, Deho watched the aftermath unfold. The human delegates were safe. The Empress was safe. The Alliance would survive. General Wu Jin and his conspirators were being led away in energy shackles, their conspiracy exposed for all to see. Ambassador Su Jin approached the Empress. "Your Majesty, I believe we have much to discuss about security cooperation." The Empress nodded slowly, looking around at the destruction. "Indeed. It seems we Veltherans have much to learn from humanity. Our telepathy made us powerful, but it also made us vulnerable. We stopped looking for threats we couldn't sense telepathically, and we humans," Su Jin replied, "have learned that we're not alone in the universe, that there are beings far more advanced than us, but who still need our unique perspective." Deho felt consciousness slipping away. The pain was too much, the blood loss too severe, but he heard Princess Hai-1's voice, close to his ear. "Stay with me, Deho. You don't get to die after proving everyone wrong. You don't get to leave before seeing what we build together." He wanted to tell her he wasn't going anywhere, that humans were too stubborn to die easily. But the darkness pulled him under before he could form the words. When Deho woke again, he was in the same healing chamber that had held Princess Hai-1. The warm gel surrounded his body, repairing the damage. Through the transparent crystal, he could see figures waiting: the Empress, the Princess, Ambassador Su Jin, Young Mi, and Taemin. The chamber opened and the gel drained away. Deho sat up slowly, his shoulder aching but functional. The Veltheron medical technology had done its work. "Captain Kim," Empress Nara said formally, "the Veltheron Empire owes you a debt we can never fully repay. You have saved my daughter twice. You have saved me. You have exposed a conspiracy that threatened to destroy us from within. What honor can we bestow that would be sufficient?" Deho thought about it. He thought about everything he had learned during his time among the Veltherans, about their strengths and their weaknesses, about the Alliance and what it could mean for both species. "Teach us," he said finally. "Teach humanity, your technology, your science, your history. And in return, let us teach you what we've learned from being vulnerable. How to see threats without telepathy. How to trust through actions instead of mind reading. How to build something together that's stronger than either species alone." The Empress smiled, the first genuine smile he had seen from her. "This can be arranged. I am creating a new position, Ambassador of Practical Defense. It will require someone who understands both human and Veltheran thinking, someone who has proven their loyalty beyond question. I offer this position to you, Captain Kim." Deho looked at Ambassador Su Jin, who nodded encouragingly. He looked at Princess Hai-1. who watched him with those swirling eyes full of hope. He thought about Earth, about the swarm wars, about humanity's long struggle for survival. "I accept," he said. "But I have one condition." "Name it," the Empress replied. "Release Tae-min from imprisonment. He spent 2 years in your cells for a crime he didn't commit. If we're building a real alliance, it starts with justice." The Empress looked at Tae-min, who stood in shocked silence. "Agreed. Tae-min is free, with full apologies from the Empire." Over the following months, the alliance took shape. Cultural exchange programs were established. Veltheran scientists came to Earth to study human innovation. Human soldiers trained Veltheran guards in non-telepathic threat assessment. Young Mi became head of the Joint Research Division, working on technology that combined human and Veltheran approaches. Dae-ho split his time between Earth and Velthar Prime. He trained the next generation of human diplomats in alien customs. He advised the Veltheran military on security vulnerabilities, and he spent long hours with Princess Hai-1, teaching her about humanity while learning about Veltheran culture. "We're writing history," she told him one day as they walked through the rebuilt ceremonial hall. "Two species that should have been enemies, becoming partners. More than partners," Dae-ho replied. "Friends. Maybe even family, eventually. The swarm wars taught your people to survive," he once said thoughtfully. "We Veltherans taught you that survival isn't enough. You must also know what you're surviving for." "And what are we surviving for?" She smiled, her crystalline features catching the light. "Each other. For moments like this, where different perspectives create something neither species could achieve alone." Dae-ho thought back to that first explosion, to the moment he had thrown himself over an alien princess without thinking. At the time, it had been pure instinct. Now he understood it was something more. It was the beginning of understanding that humanity wasn't alone, wasn't the center of the universe, but still had value to contribute. "We shield those who stand beside us," he said quietly, echoing the words from Earth's coalition message. "We are humanity, and we are here to stay." Princess Hai-1 placed her crystalline hand on his shoulder. "And we Veltherans are better for having you here." Together, they stood in the hall where everything had begun and nearly ended. Around them, humans and Veltherans worked side by side, building something new, an alliance forged not in political necessity but in shared sacrifice and proven loyalty. The stars themselves seemed to shine brighter, as if approving of what these two species were creating together.